Hello there, I'm Nick. Yeah, I'm definitely Nick. And this is the Game Apologist, where we look for the good in bad games. But today, we're not talking about a bad game, but a system, and far from a bad one at that. Today, we're here to talk about the Vita, or maybe, more appropriately, the Mortem, because you stupid idiots didn't buy it, and now it's dead. We knew it was gonna happen. The Vita has been on its deathbed for a long time now, and it's finally been put to rest as Sony recently announced that they had shipped their final units of this wonderful handheld. Now, some of you may be thinking to yourself, wait, they were still making those things? And even more of you may be thinking to yourself, what's a Vita? To answer that question, you uncultured barbarian, the Vita was Sony's second attempt at a handheld game console after the PSP. Released in 2012, it was, at the time, far more powerful than Nintendo's 3DS and much more capable than most mobile phones. Certainly, the ones in its price range. Where the PSP was somewhere between the PS1 and the PS2 in terms of power, the Vita was somewhere between the PS2 and the PS3, featuring a crystal clear OLED screen, Wi-Fi capability, or even a 3G model, a touchscreen on the front and back, the ability to download and play your digital library of PSP and PS1 games, and launching with an exclusive Uncharted game just to show off how powerful this little machine can be. Even Ken Levine popped up on Sony's stage at E3 in 2011 to announce a BioShock game exclusive to the Vita. Man, can't wait to play that, Ken. This was all shaping up to be an incredible little machine. And it was. So why is it on the show? Let me make myself absolutely clear. The only reason I'm even covering the Vita is because it didn't sell well. And it should have, you monsters. But why didn't it sell well? Who can really say for sure, but there are some theories as to why people didn't gravitate toward the device. Perhaps it was a confusing name. Clearly, this was the successor to the PSP, addressing many of that machine's shortcomings and providing a true next-generation experience, leading many of us to believe it could have been named the PSP 2. But since the PSP wasn't exactly breaking records, they tried to deviate away from all the branding and tell the consumers this was a new and unique machine, not just an iterative update akin to the likes of Apple's iPhones, even though that model has worked just fine for Sony's home console. Or maybe it has to do with some stupid choices made by Sony prior to launch. While it's true that the Vita had a 3G model that was exclusive to AT&T, and going by the audience's reaction...
And we'll be partnering with AT&T as the exclusive carrier for PlayStation Vita in the United States.
Yeah, not a popular choice. The 3G version launched a week before the Wi-Fi only version, and with a more expensive price tag, staggering the release and potentially confusing customers. And let's not forget the stupid expensive proprietary memory cards, asking high prices for relatively little storage. None of this helped the system. But I think Extra Credit nailed it best in a 5-minute video they released back in 2014. I recommend giving it a watch, but the long and short of it is this. The system was far too ambitious for its own good, and it didn't have enough software to back it up. When the Vita launched, it came with the promise of PSP so long ago, a console experience on the go, and while PSP did a commendable job through its lifetime, it was never really a breakout success for the company. And now the Vita had far more competition than ever. Console games are expensive to make, and not a lot of developers want to risk spending that much time and money on a potential flop. And while it's true the 3DS also launched with lackluster titles, Nintendo doubled down on the machine, releasing quality first-party content as well as dropping the price point. Sony, on the other hand, seemed only to distance itself from its own system as more time passed. While it was true you could get console-quality experiences on the Vita, they weren't exactly standout games. Uncharted was fine, but we already had 3 of those on the PS3. Assassin's Creed Liberation was a well-made game, but again, you had about 30 different games on the home console at that point. And Call of Duty? Well, as much as fun as it would be to have a first-person shooter on the go, COD Declassified was hot trash. While Sony does have beloved franchises, it's hard to argue that any of them have the fanbase of Mario, Zelda, or Pokemon. All Nintendo had to do was spit out enough of those games on the 3DS, and sure enough, the fans gobbled it all down. When it became clear the Vita would not hit sales expectations, Sony would instead back off the machine, and when their PS4 launched and became a ridiculous success, they didn't see the point in supporting their handheld. When the company making the machine does not have faith in it, why should the consumers? Well, let me tell you why. As of March 31st, 2019, the Vita is officially dead. Weird, because I've been hearing that the Vita has been dead for years now. Look, it was never a huge success, modest at best in Japan and almost impossible to find on store shelves here in America for years now, but the people who bought the Vita loved the Vita. Think about that for a minute. This machine, which Sony themselves stopped creating games for only a couple of years into its life, has survived almost 8 years on the market. Most of the extra features that were boasted in the beginning are dead. No more YouTube, Netflix, and that weird Near thing nobody used. And a lot of the games exclusive to the machine have been ported over to other systems. And honestly, that's a good thing. These developers worked hard on some incredible games. Their work should be in front of as many people as possible. That doesn't discount the wide variety of what you could and still can play on the Vita. What makes the Vita special is not the exclusive games. It's because you want to play everything on the Vita. It's a powerful, well-built, beautiful machine, and all these games look and feel wonderful. Let me share some of my favorite games I've first played on the Vita. I don't care if they're updated versions of older games or stuff that was released later or around the same time to the Switch and PS4. I'm not here to compare this machine to another. I'm not going to pretend like the Vita is about to win any competitions. I love this machine, and this is what I loved playing. Danganronpa, a game series about a group of high school kids being forced to kill each other in a game run by a psychotic teddy bear. Oh yeah, I should mention, the Vita quickly became the home for weird Japanese nonsense pretty quick. I don't want to spoil the fun if you haven't tried it yourself. The series first rose to prominence on the Vita, and once you've played, you'll understand why it's ballooned into a franchise and ported out onto other machines. The game is split between a visual novel-style narrative and Phoenix Wright-style courtroom processions where you try to figure out which teenager killed another teenager. It's great. Speaking of visual novels, well, there's a whole bunch of them. Virtue's Last Reward, Time Zero Dilemma, Amnesia Memories, I don't think that's how those work, Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters, Psycho Pass, Mandatory Happiness, Hatful Boyfriend? Not quite sure how to say that, where you date pigeons, and that's not even the weirdest part of the game. Steins Gate, Seven Scarlet, Norn 9, Valhalla, spelled with numbers. No, I did not lose control of all of my motor functions and start slapping my face against a keyboard. These are real titles. Japan, you are out of your damn mind. Don't you dare ever change. Let's transition slowly from dating sims and visual novels into RPGs, with Persona 4 Golden. Easily the best version of the game, and while I'm sure it will see life again on other systems, for now, the best place to play it is on the Vita. You also had a portable version of Final Fantasy X for the first time on Vita. Yes, I'm aware you can play it on the Switch, and good for you. Do that. I already did on the Vita, as well as just about every other Final Fantasy thanks to the back catalog of games on the PlayStation Store. In fact, a hefty amount of legendary PS1 RPGs can be played on this machine as well. Wild Arms, Suikoden, Grandia, Vagrant Story, Parasite Eve, yeah, that's there too. Not to mention the likes of YS? Did I just... How have we allowed game developers to name games like this for so long? What was I talking about? Oh right, RPGs. Demon Gaze, Stranger of Sword City, I Am Setsuna, good Digimon games. Who would have thought we'd see the day? And oh gosh, Child of Light, my precious little darling. I know it's on everything, but I got my physical version for the Vita and it is getting more praise. Sorry. But look at it. Look at the birds! Everybody rhymes. I don't have to leave it in my will for someone else to beat because it isn't a million hours long. No? Still not enough? You need some more Vita-specific stuff? Fine. I hope you like Monster Hunter. It's not like the Vita ever got its own Monster Hunter, probably would have helped sales, but whatever. They had plenty of clones for the machine, 2 of which are still exclusive to the Vita, Soul Sacrifice and Freedom Wars. You can tell both of these games were specifically made for the system as they both show off what it can do geographically, and the control scheme fits perfectly. I don't play a lot of Monster Hunter style games, so I can't really tell you how either of them fare in comparison, but both of them have a loyal fan base. So if you're a fan of mission-based action games that require a lot of prepping and crazy long boss fights, well, give it a go. While you're there, you can also play God Eater and... Honestly, the exclusives became scarce pretty quickly, but there are some strangely exclusive games of very popular franchises. Like I mentioned before, there's Call of Duty Declassified, but the less said about it, the better. But if you want a solid first-person exclusive, the system has its own Killzone, a technical wonder for the Vita and a very solid game. I haven't played much, so this is more of a secondhand recommendation. So if you're a fan of the series and this looks good to you, I'd recommend grabbing it while you can. This remains a Vita exclusive, as does Touch My Katamari. Look, I didn't know how to transition to this game, so just roll with it. Get it? Because you roll? Guys, I'm funny. Everyone's making such a stink about the original being released on the Switch when you have one actually built for a handheld that's been available for years. A little less surprising are the Vita exclusive versions of Mod Nation Racers and Little Big Planet, both of which try to take advantage of the system's many gimmicks to different levels of success. Mod Nation was fine, but if you want some more racing options, you also had portable versions of MotorStorm RC, Need for Speed Most Wanted, a Vita exclusive Asphalt, Wipeout, and Sonic Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, because I can't get away from this guy for just one episode. Vita's Little Big Planet was especially fun, as they incorporated the two touchscreens when possible. And like the PSP version not made by its original developer, Media Molecule, as they were busy with Tearaway. Now, it's true that the game was re-released on the PS4 and sadly flopped on both systems, but I would argue that the Vita version, while missing some bells and whistles of the re-release, is still the version to play. Tearaway was made to take advantage of the system's touchscreen, camera, and microphone along with the standard controls, and it's actually a lot of fun. The art style is unique and oozing with that Media Molecule charm, and it gets you involved in the game's world on a level we would not see again until the likes of Moss and Astrobot on PSVR years later. And while talking about ports, having Vanillaware games on the go was just fantastic. Dragon's Crown, Muramasa, and my personal favorite, Odinsphere. Ugh, so pretty! Another game that started off as a defining game on the Vita only to be ported to the PS4 is Gravity Rush, a charming little open-world action game that lets you manipulate the gravity of the main character, Cat. Again, a gorgeous art style, charming characters, and most importantly, a lot of fun. Also, you can send random people to their deaths if you shift gravity around them, so that's pretty cool. Uncharted. Golden Abyss still remains exclusive to the system, and it's a lot of fun. There are a couple of shoved-in gimmicks that include the touchscreen, but for the most part, it's a true, portable, Uncharted experience. Nathan Drake is just as charming as he always is, as he invades ancient ruins he has no business being in, killing a small country's worth of people, and having Spider-Man-level clinging ability when climbing walls. If you're a fan of these games and you missed it, honestly, it's worth your time. There was also Assassin's Creed Liberation, and while it did get a digital re-release on newer systems, it started off on the Vita, and it still looks and plays great on its home handheld. The first to star a female protagonist, just a weird choice. Girls are icky, right, my fellow males? Well, if you can get past that, it's a great game. The setting of New Orleans is unique for the series, but it still feels like a full Assassin's Creed experience. Woof. Look, I could keep listing games all day long. There are still all those downloadable PSP and PS1 games, crossplay, and buy games, and if you own them prior to owning a Vita, or held them in your PlayStation Plus stash, all of that stuff was just there and ready to go for you if you got into this machine late. You can still do that now. Have a bunch of PS1 games that you bought on your PS3 that you don't own anymore? It'll be ready to download on the Vita. Again, a lot of this stuff is not exclusive to the machine, and the stuff that remains exclusive, while a lot of it is solid, probably nothing I'd buy a system for. Regardless, there's a stunning amount of quality on the go, and for a cheap price on the Vita. There's a reason why there's still such a passionate following for this machine, despite it being dead for years. The build quality is solid, the screen is gorgeous, for the time it was very powerful. That sleep mode lasts forever. You can earn trophies on this thing, and it lets you play Klonoa anywhere you want. This was an incredible machine that none of us deserved, and it breaks my heart that it died such a slow death. But it took so long because the people who bought this thing saw its potential and still do to this day. And if I have to compare it to other handhelds, while I respect Nintendo's legacy, they've never built a handheld as well designed as this thing. Yes, the 3DS library is impressive, and the Switch is more powerful. It should be. It released 6 years after the Vita. To me, neither compare to the quality of the Vita. Again, Nintendo's stuff is fine. They clearly know how to make a system, but I like the look and feel of this machine. I just feel like whatever I play will be a high-quality experience. Yeah, fine, it didn't meet its full potential. Had an uphill battle this whole way. In 2012, people called it dead. That extra credit video I mentioned? Published in 2014. Year after year, people said this machine was dead. It's true it wasn't crazy popular. It's true Sony did not support it with first-party titles for most of its time on the market, but dead? Hardly. It released in Japan in 2011, and the final day of its production was March 31st, 2019. That's a pretty respectable time span for any system. So let's not mourn its loss. Let's celebrate its legacy. Years from now, people will sing its legend, placing it on top 10 lists of most underrated systems alongside the likes of GameCube and Dreamcast. It was ahead of its time and just refused to stay dead, and you know what? Despite the production ceasing, I'm still not ready to call this little wonder machine dead quite yet. Somehow, I don't feel like we've seen the last of Sony's handhelds, be it homebrewed games, or if they somehow go insane and tackle the handheld market again. The Vita will survive. The Vita will never die, because the Vita is life. Toot toot, Sony fanboys.
Frobisher says Deliver my pudding. Jump. Frobisher says, fight this bear. Frobisher says, make a terrible din.